Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Now, one of the rhythm patterns that I mentioned to you during the last episode was that 3-on-2. And I told you in 4/4 time, if you have only 2 beats, and then you have 3 notes that look like they might be triplets, but they're not, those 3 beats have to cover the last 2 beats of the measure that would be missing without it. And it's nothing I've really talked about before, but it's just kind of dimly aware that maybe I should. So today what I brought with me is I brought this instrument. This is an Indian instrument. I've had it in here before. This instrument comes from India. It's not a Native American instrument, but it comes from the country of India, and it's all handmade. It is a bamboo flute. It doesn't have a tone hole in the back. It does have tone holes in the front, of course, and they're all the same size, which means it's a little bit harder to cover them, because usually on like a recorder or other instruments, those holes are not exactly the same size. They're different size to accommodate the different size of your fingers. And I know this was made for, I assume, I shouldn't say I know, I assume it was made for tourists, for artifacts for tourists, because in English, it says right on the front of it, made in India. And it says it in English. And so I'm assuming it was made for people who speak the English language and they want to have an instrument, a real instrument from India, which this of course is. There's a little block here, and it has this large C. Now, I've been curious about what that C really means, and I'm not sure. It could be that the instrument is in the key of C. That may be what it is. Or it may possibly be part of an insignia or part of a symbol that means something to the Indian people. I don't know what it would mean, but it may have a special meaning, the size of the instrument or something about the instrument, and it has that C right on that. So at any rate, it plays pretty well. I have a number of these, and some of them play well and some of them don't. This little one, it has a softer tone. I don't play it very much because these bamboo instruments are very, very easy to split. The lower notes are a little not secure at all, but the upper notes, there's about 5 notes, 5 secure notes, and that's about all that there is, although I think the way that they've made it, it should have the capability of doing part of a second octave, but a lot of them don't. And it's got a little glaze on it, so it shines a little bit, although you may not be able to tell that from the television, but you can tell that these notes, that these tone holes are all the same size. I like it. I love it. I do some work with it, but as I say, I'm careful of it, and I don't play it very much because these bamboo instruments, the wood can split very easily. Once it splits, then the instrument can't be played. Or if it can be played, it can be played a little bit, but then that split gets wider and wider to the point where you can't play it at all. Why would the instrument split? I mean, it's not split now. One reason it would split is that the temperature difference between you blowing in the air and the air, your warm air blowing in, and the cooler air around it. I mean, it doesn't take much of anything to split an instrument that's bamboo. I have several instruments that are bamboo, but the bamboo is thick and it won't split, and they've made sure of that. But these are inexpensive instruments, and they do split easily. So you wouldn't want them in a lot of temperature change. You wouldn't want to play them a whole lot because of the differences between your air temperature as you blow in and the air on the outside of the instrument. Over a period of time, you could get a little split in it for that reason. They're just very, very delicate. But they play well enough that I want to bring them in when I can. So I'm going to be playing a 3-on-2 number. And this is a hymn. I don't remember the name of it, but it is a hymn. And you will notice, like right here, this is 2 beats, But the whole measure, this is 4/4 time, so you got 4 beats to a measure, and a quarter note is worth 1 beat. When you get to a measure like this half note is just 2 beats, because that's what half notes are, and then you have 2 beats left. So you take these 3 beats, these 3 notes, and they look like a triplet. They're all written like triplets. They've got the 8th note flag over them, but there's no 3 on top of it. And you make these, although they're 3 beats, you make them into 2 beats. You squeeze them in 2 beats. And this is repeated throughout the song. For example, this one right here, here's your half note, and then you have 2 more. Well, that gives you 4 beats. When you get over here, here's your half note, and here's 3 beats. I forgot to put the line there, but this has to squeeze into 2. So you have 2 beats and 3 notes playing those 2 beats. It's 3 on 2. You see that? You don't see it terribly often, but you do see it every so often in music. And so when you see it, if you don't know what it is, you could possibly get confused. So I'm going to play this here. And I want you just to look and see, look at the music and see if you can follow me as I play it. 4/4 time, it starts with 2 counts. Now, normally, I would not count the 2 counts. If I had a whole orchestra playing this, or a whole music group playing this, I would count out those 2 beats. I might even conduct them if we were doing a concert. I would bring my hand down in the beat pattern for 1, 2, and then everyone comes in on 3, because that would be your 3 and your 4. But when you're playing by yourself, you don't bother with all of that. You just begin, but just remember the timing of it. It can be like an introduction, but you don't want to make it faster than the music that it is. You don't want to rush it any. This is a hymn, and it's a nice hymn. It's not played very fast. So let me try this, and we'll do that on this Indian flute. One thing about these little instruments is they could get squealy real fast. And this started to squeal a little bit, but not much. And it has a really nice tone. Excuse me, I really do like this instrument. Now, what you have to remember also is when you're playing it, don't play it too loud. It'll change its pitch. It's a softer tone. It's good for a solo instrument as long as you keep it in the range that it can handle. And I did that because you see this A, this G, this B flat, and I played the B flat like I would play it on a recorder. I basically used recorder fingerings on it. And that B flat is, if we want to take a look at this, here's your B, and just add that 3rd finger down, skipping the 2nd one, and you have your B flat. And when I got down to the F, there are a couple of Fs here. What I did was I played it like you would a Baroque instrument. Here's your F, and I skipped this, and I played and put that 2nd finger down. You can see the difference in the pitch if I don't do that. So it plays very much, or the way I played it today, it plays very much like a Baroque recorder. The recorders are Baroque and German, and they play well. There's not much difference in the fingering patterns, but with a Baroque, you do have an extra fingering here or there to make the tone a little bit more accurate. And so that's the way I handled it this way. So when you read the music, it's not very hard to read, because all you're doing is you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. When you get to here, you do have that 3 on 2. 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 are these 3 together, and you just kind of fit them in so they fit into that 2-beat space there. Then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. When you get down to here, you get the same thing, only it's going up. When you get here, the same thing. You 1, 2, and 3 and 4, 3 and 4 for these 3 beats here. And so it's not hard to do it once you know it. I do like the piece. It's just it is a hymn, and I don't know who wrote it, and I don't remember the name of it. But if I remember a hymn in my mind, I oftentimes just write it down. You know, I may not know, I know that it's a hymn, I know I've played it, I know I've heard it a dozen times or so, and I may not remember the name, but I script it. If you want to remember a piece of music, say a piece of music is going through your mind, and you want to remember it because you like the song, and you're afraid you're not going to remember it because once it gets out of your mind, who knows whether it comes back or not. Write it down. Just labeled it favorite song or something, write it down. And to do that, you just take a piece of music paper, take an instrument, and you play it on the instrument, and then you just write down what you played on the instrument, and you do it on staff paper. This is staff paper. And then you can remember what the time is. Is it 3/4? Is it 2/4? Is it 4/4? You kind of know that as you're thinking about it. It may fit into more than one time signature, and you just mark that, and that's it. And then whenever you want to play or you think of that song, what is that song I liked so much? There it is. It's written down. You just play it. And you can do it because you're reading the music. The idea that I have in mind is to teach you how to read music. So for any music that you want to listen to and you know it and you like it, you can simply write it down. I call it scripting it. You can write it down and then you can go back to it, and then when you play it, it all comes back to you. You don't lose it. So it's a handy thing to do. And if you're thinking of a song because you're writing a song, you know, if you think of a song, it comes to your mind, and it's nothing you've ever heard before. As far as you know, this is a new song to you. It's something that you've created. As far as you know, it's something that you've created. Write it down. And you do the same thing. You get your music paper out, you get your pen or pencil, you get your instruments, and you fiddle around with it, and you find out, oh yeah, this is where it starts, and this is how it progresses. Write it down and script it. Then you're not going to lose it. If you don't do that, it's easy for you to remember something that you think is important, and then if you don't think of it in a while, it's gone. And, you know, you have such amnesia for it, you'll say to yourself, well, I thought of something. I needed to write that down. What was it? What did I think of? Also, if you're thinking about writing something like a little testimony or a personal sermon or something, and I do this all the time, you get an idea in your mind. Write the idea down before you have a chance to forget it, because chances are you're busy, you're doing this, you're doing that, and you think back to it. You have no knowledge. When you thinking of it, oh, I'll remember it, but you find out that you don't. It's like in dreams. Most of the dreams you never remember. While you're having the dream, you may think to yourself, I'll remember that. That's a powerful dream. Wake up and it's gone. You don't know what it was. Or part of it is gone, and you can only think of part of the dream, but not all of it. And you don't necessarily get it back. So that's what you have to think of. Write down whatever you can so it preserves it, whether you go back to it or not. It preserves it. So if you ever do want to go back to it, you will be able to do that. So I'm going to take this off and get something else here. I got to watch my time. I'll get enough time, I guess. Now I'm going to be doing a waltz. And I did it in color. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. This is a waltz that I wrote. And I want you to notice right here, This is going to look like a little bit like a mess to you. But you have your 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. When you get to the bottom, you start playing it and you just go all the way through. When you go all the way through, at the end, you have a DC Alfine. What does it mean? It means go back to the top and play to the fine. That's the end of the song. The fine is the end of the song. Well, what if you want to repeat it, but you don't want to repeat the whole measure because it goes on from there? The fine to the song can be halfway through a measure. It doesn't have to be at the end of a measure. So you put a thicker line and put the fine. I know it's spelled F-I-N-E, but it's pronounced fine. Put that line there, and that's the end of the song. So because if you play this, it's like you're going to go on and you're going to play something else, and it's hard to end the song. You can either write a separate measure and have it as a second ending, or there are other ways you could do it. But one of the ways, which is what I show you today, because I haven't done this before either, is you can split the measure, and that can be the end. Leave that note out. If you want to play through the whole thing, just play this like it was one measure and don't stop there. But when you get to the DC, I didn't put a DC up there, but I didn't have to because DC goes back to the beginning, so you're going to end up at the beginning anyway, and then you get up to the fine, that's where it's closed. So this is 3/4 time. And I'll have you just kind of watch and see if you can follow me. It's in the key of G because there is an F sharp there, and the key of G has one sharp. So if you're playing it to yourself, you might count out that 2-measure rest. You have that 2-beat rest right here. That's a 2-beat rest. If it was hanging from this, it would be a 4-beat rest, but it's popping up on that third line, so that's a 2-beat rest, and that's how you can tell the difference. So let me play this, and you just follow along. So you can see that's the end of the song. Now you know when I ended on this D. If I had played this, it's like an open invitation just to keep going. It's like a whole new phrase. And you don't want to start that if this is going to be the end of the song. You don't want to start a whole new phrase. So you get there and you play that low D and you stop it there. That's the fine. That's the end. So what I did was I started off, and I played all the way through here, no repeats. When I get to this DC, I go back and play down here, and I get to that note, and I stop there, and that is the end of the song, okay? And that was just a simple waltz. So so I think you can see that. I can see that pretty well from here. So I don't know how much more I want to do. I'm going to do one more because I think I've got the time. I'll have to do it kind of fast, but I want to do it if I can. I want to show you the dotted quarter, and the 8th note, which I started off describing to you. It's a little bit longer than a quarter note because you add an 8th note to it, if you remember that. So this is another hymn. And this, you start here, you play that. When you get to here, you have that dotted quarter plus an 8th. You make that quarter note a little bit longer, an 8th note longer, and attach it to the note so it's the same note, and then add the 8th note to it. And so the reason for my doing this is so you can see, I've talked about it, but I want you to see what that actually sounds like. So you will probably even recognize this song. It's not a long song. It's not particularly hard to play. So if you can follow along there, it's in the key of G, so it's in F sharp in there, because the key of G is in F sharp. It's in four beats to the measure. It's a 4/4 thing. And so the quarter note gets one beat. And if you're counting it, which you may want to in your mind, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4. You see, I add a little bit longer to that quarter note, 1, 2, and, 1, 2, and, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so it goes all the way down through. Now, of some piano teachers will have students count when they're playing, but you can't do that on a woodwind, you can't do that on a brass because the instrument is in your mouth. You can't do it on the flute because the flute is right here. So let me play that and see if you can kind of follow along to what I'm doing. Now, if you wanted to add an introduction to it, you could add like 2 or 3 measures at the end and play them up here before you start it, and that acts as an introduction. In hymn books, you rarely see introductions written in. Nobody ever writes in an introduction. You either take the last line or you take a part of 2 or 3 measures and you can add it to the front of the song and play it, and that's the introduction for the whole piece. The value of having an introduction is the fact that people, if they're going to be singing with you, know, they get a sense of what the rhythm is, they get a sense of what the tempo is, and they know what note to start on, because usually they're pretty much familiar with the hymn anyway. So if I want to do an introduction, I might do just something like this. So I added the last 2 measures. I could have added more. I could have gone over to that E, and that might have even been a little better. So you see, you get an introduction to the song, which is never written in, but that you can put in by yourself. And that also shows people how fast it would go. People who are singing, if they're in a church or something, if they're singing, they don't necessarily know how fast a song is going just by looking at the notes. Unless they're musicians and they happen to know the song very well, they may not have a clue as to what the tempo is supposed to be, and they can't just pick a beginning note out of the air unless they've got perfect pitch, and most people don't have perfect pitch, and most people who have it wishes that they didn't have it because there are problems with it, because people are always singing a little off pitch or playing a little off pitch, and sometimes an orchestra will deliberately pitch too high. They do it because it gives more vibrancy to the sound, because the vibrations are going a little bit faster than normal, so it seems to add a vibrancy to the music. But for a person who has perfect pitch, it's kind of torture, because what they're singing is not really dead on, and what their perfect pitch tells them is exactly what the note should be, and so it's difficult for them. But at any rate, most people just can't go picking out a note out of the air. Oh, I know how I can start this. They need to have a note to start on, so everybody's starting on the same note. Everybody understands the tempo. And so that's the value of an introduction. Well, I'm going to close it here, and we're going to go on from here. If you can, if you want to, email me. Let me know if larger notes and the larger staff meet your needs in terms of reaching the being able to read the music, because I want you to be able to see what I'm talking about, and you will understand it a lot better that way. So we'll close it here, and please join me next time.